stretch my arms to the sky, my fingers reaching for cloud, and hear my name called as if through a wind tunnel. Agatha! I launch forward and out I go. Schumann drums through me, making me buoyant. On I go, air kept in light. Music rises and rushes past and within me. The house martins chime their disapproval, the blackbird too. Down, down I drop until I hit ground. There I sprawl, broken but whole, singular as a feather fallen from the sky. So that's poor Agatha. I was preparing this reading today and I realised all of, well, even though it's a book about love, a lot of the stories are extremely sad. So I tried to pick ones that weren't too sad, but it was hard. So this one is a little bit lighter. This one, I'm in an artist collective here in Ballinasloe, County Galway, and there are, I think, 10 of us at the moment. We're called Group 8. There were 8 originally. There's one other writer and the rest of them are visual artists. So we have an annual exhibition, and last year for Leonardo da Vinci's quincentenary, we picked Leonardo as our theme. We pick a theme every year. So he was 500 years dead last year. And so we decided we'd make work, you know, riffing off Leonardo. So I did plump for the obvious one. I wrote a story in the voice of Mona Lisa. So this is the flash fiction. It's called La Gioconda Claims Her Name. Just for those who don't know, the word babbo in Italian is daddy. Today I turn 15 years old and today I will marry. Babbo comes to the loggia where Mama is brushing my hair. He speaks. He says the man you will wed is named Francesco di Bartolomeo di Zanobi del Giocondo. I giggle. So many names. I try the first part on my tongue to prepare myself. Francesco. Mama pulls the bristles across my scalp. I never dreamt a daughter of mine would marry a merchant. She sucks air through her teeth, a waspish whistle, and taps my head with the hairbrush. Remember, Lisa, she says, you will always be a Gherardini. Capisci? Capisco, Mama, I say. How could I fail to understand her? Always my sisters and I have been told that we are important, queens among women, pearls among sows. Always we have felt it, for we are blessed not just with robust health, but with good looks too and fine humour. We are girls who, despite Babbo's straitened circumstances, want for little and laugh easy. At the altar in Santo Spirito, my new husband does not look at me. He keeps his eyes to the side. At the banquet in the Palazzo, he does not look at me. When we dance chest to chest, my husband does not look at me. In our bedchamber, he does not look at me. I have my maid unpin my hair. She removes my sleeves, my gown, my kirtle. She unclothes me down to my smock. I smile at her. Leave us now, I say. I go to Francesco, where he sits on our marriage bed, and stand before him. Still, he looks away to the side, as if he were observing a spirit past my shoulder. Husband, I say, placing my hands in his. I am Lisa Gherardini, and I am your wife. Wife, he says, pressing my fingers gently. I am Francesco di Bartolomeo di Zanobi del Giocondo, and I am your husband. I giggle, and he does the same. I am Lisa Gherardini di Bartolomeo di Zanobi del Giocondo. You are, he says, lifting his eyes to my face and kissing my lips. You are my Madonna Lisa. I kiss him back, softly, swiftly. I am, I say, Mona Lisa. So that's how she got her name, according to me anyway. The next one is called Snowdrops, and there was a competition. I think it was Books Upstairs were looking for a Valentine's Day story. So I entered this. I didn't win. But the wonderful thing about being prompted to write something like that out of the blue is you have something new to submit elsewhere. And it was subsequently published in Flash, the magazine out of the University of Chester. It's about forbidden love. It's about a maid called Martha and her mistress's son, Robert. It's set in England sometime. I think I was watching a lot of Poldark when I wrote this, so the voice is Poldarkian, but I'm not going to attempt the accent. Snowdrops. I spied a bunch of snowdrops on the step when I stood out, tied with a scrap of blue ribbon. I lifted the flowers and saw that it were my ribbon, the one I lost from my bonnet after church. I put the snowdrops on top of the linens in the basket I carried and went to the washing line. Young Robert came dawdling up the low field and stood close by to watch me. "Hast thee heard of Saint Valentine, Martha?" he called, and gave that merry smile of his. "Be she the one who plucked out her own eyes?" I asked, for mischief. "Nay, nay," said Robert, "Valentine be a man saint." "And what does he do with himself, this goodly man?" I asked. "He be the patron saint of lovers, Martha." Robert grinned. "How does thee like that?" "I like it well enough, Master Robert, though it has nought to do with me." I flapped a pair of drawers at him. "Shoo now, scatter," I said. He laughed and ran up towards the house. I held the snowdrops to my cheeks and had their cool petals temper the heat that always rises up inside me when Robert is by. I turned to watch him fix his hair and coat before entering the door, writing himself for his mamma and his tutor. Robert be going to school soon, and he'll come back years hence a young man. There'll be no more fancy for the like of me. I placed the snowdrops into the empty basket. Once inside the house, I ran up the back stairs to my bedroom under the eaves and stood them in a jug of water. I plucked one snowy head, kissed it, and tucked it inside my corset, the way it would be next the red beat of my heart. So that's poor Martha, loving her young master. This is one of the sad ones, actually. When Miss Emily came out, my novel about Emily Dickinson, I went to Massachusetts a few times for research and then to read from the novel and stuff like that. And while I was there, I have a good friend in Massachusetts, Marcella Brown. She brought me to Springfield, Massachusetts, and to the art gallery there. And the painting that really grabbed my attention was called Morning Picture, and it's by Edwin Romanzo Elmer. And it's a beautiful, it's sort of in a naive style. It's a picture of a couple in mourning, and their child, Effie, a 9-year-old girl, is to the side of them, in front of their house in Massachusetts, and there's a sheep in the picture. Google the image, it's absolutely wonderful. Morning Picture. You may know the Adrienne Rich poem about the same picture. So I was moved to write a very short story after seeing this painting, which is so affecting. And in the painting, in the story, it's in the voice of Effie, the little 9-year-old girl who has died, and she's speaking to her mother from beyond the grave. So it's in the voice of a ghost as such. It's called Morning Becomes Shelburne Falls. Being dead is not so terrible, but there are things to miss. You and father, of course, and my pet lamb, and the Luna moth who lately, to my delight, decorated my hand. I see you and father perched by the house like two black swans, silent and still. You sit in your rocker as if you expect me to come up the hill, pushing my doll buggy, followed by Dodie, the hen we named together. Our little red hen. I want to cry out, "I am here, Ma!" But you will not hear. I'm above the world now, not in it, and you must go on without me. Effie, do not call me Ma, you said often. It is common. Very well, Ma, I used to say. You would grab me then and laugh into my ear, your breath warm and moist and welcome. And I would press my face to your breast and savour the thrum of your heart, where you said there was a chamber all for me. I never reached corset age, Ma, but I should like to know what whalebone feels like, snug around my ribs. Does that surprise you? You thought me a small girl, but I was sprouting fast. I was ready to become a woman, ready for all the accoutrements you had, rags for the flow, stays for my figure, and tortoiseshell combs to keep up my hair. But none of that was to be. The scarlatina came and laid its hand on me, and oh, I felt unwell. Tiny red spots stole over my body from neck to arms to belly, and the fever made me swoon. My tongue was a rough strawberry, and nothing you did, Ma, nor father, nor the doctor, could save me, not a thing. But I am made of pure memory, and I can visit us as we once were whenever I choose. I can conjure up bedtimes and birthdays and dwell with you there. And I can also call at you at home. I come mostly when you are not wishing for me or wanting me, though your wishes and wants pull on me like Mother Moon on the tide. But it is when your mind is trained elsewhere that I like to visit. I stand by the spinning wheel and watch your nose crease as you feed the thread. I watch the light make a halo of your hair and see your black dress shine like jet. I long for you to pull me into your arms and say, Effie, you are my best girl. And I will say, as I always did, I'm your only girl. Then you will shoo me away. Out now, dearest, go, take the air. For flyer and bobbin must work so that wool may be spun. Outside, my lamb waits for me on the hill, ready to start our next adventure, chasing the luna moth that flits like a bright green kite, tails and all, above the grass. You seem caught in a spell, Ma, a spell of my weaving, though I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry that I have to leave you and Father. It is not what I would have chosen for myself. I wish more than anything to hear you say, stop slouching, Effie. Do not slurp. Animals are not allowed indoors. Though I sulked mightily when you said those things before, I would give my 2 legs to be back with you, my flesh once more teeming with blood. You must not slip under, Ma. Father needs you. You are his helpmeet, and men need wives more than women need husbands. You know that this is true, for you told me so yourself. Listen now, Ma, and listen well. I am not dead. I am only waiting. So that's poor Effie. I was going to say I'll leave on a lighter note, but this one is sort of sad too. This one is called Sappho's Apple, and I'll finish here. It's a microfiction, which is a very tiny fiction for my purposes, under 100 words. I consider microfiction. The Americans are more generous with their word counts, so they think under 300. It's called Sappho's Apple, and I'll just read the little poem from Sappho that inspired it. Sappho wrote, at the end of the bough, its uttermost end, missed by the harvester, ripens the apple, nay, not overlooked, but far out of reach. So with all best things. So this is Sappho's Apple, and thanks for listening. How to send love to a now gone lover. Send like scribbles across landscape a heart's store of moments past, the clash and thrum of skin, the soft phrases lightly shared, the hard ones broken from the tongue. He is away, this love, taken perhaps up into the sky, above the western peaks that gave him shelter in the end, over water, seawards. Or he is there still on his headland, sentry of life and death, there at the salty end of the bough, as out of reach as Sappho's apple. Thanks a million.
Okay, if you want to unmute to give a round of applause, go ahead. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Nuala, for that. Oh, do you want to introduce me, or do I need an introduction?
I'll introduce you now, Máighréad. Máighréad Medbh lives in Dublin. Imbolg, just published by Arlen House, is her 8th book of poetry and incorporates older work written since 2009, with a sequence written this year, a pandemic sequence. Her previous book, Parvit of Age Lost, is a verse fantasy. I'm shortlisted for the 2017 Pigott Prize. She's also published a prose work, Savage Solitude, with Daedalus Press. She's been known as a performance poet and is currently working on a creative critical PhD at DCU. And Máighréad is going to perform from Imbolg for us now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to stand. If there's any problem with sound, do let me know. So I'm going to adjust my camera just a slightly, probably. Okay. Imbolg, a new season. My mother's wintered womb, goodbye. It hasn't been an easy passage. Sea unquiet in a pitch of nighttime shots and shockings. Take and eat me, glut of light. Display me in your bare-arsed honesty. Here I come, breaching the small gap like a spear, hand and leg before me. She screams. I am her pain. Inside her everywhere I met a challenge. Wall became wall of mirrors, faces I couldn't read. And not a shred of scent to tell me was I ram or you or what, but a hard desire. Rampant, ringed by stares, I bucked, butted, gashed myself, got hooked on sheer fight. She broke, toppled my home. Now who's the lamb? I raise my head and wail once for the lost season, but no regret. I never planned the wreckage or the slicing spear. I claim innocence. Her body started it, not mine. However much she hates me, I must stand upon my splayed legs and learn to bound. So safe. I wouldn't, she says, spine winged by the floral sofa. She glances curiously at the netted window and notes the weird hat of a random passer. One promise, one track, one daily remade bed. She thought herself big once, a bucking thing no rule could ride. Her astrolabe snagged on Jupiter's moons who burned their penny each into her palms. Once the wedding dress had tucked its neck into its snowy breast, she became gangly legs and played house witch. Walls thickened, she no nucleus, but essential organelle. Now embedded in the structure, it's her umbrella. Boy, it's wet beyond, this life and its weathers. I am virtuous, she tells herself. I honor my contracts. Come rain, hail, or sudden fire, I cling to the ship. This next poem is a kind of expressionistic take on a woman's last moments. The woman is real. Many of the images are taken from cinema, actually. Climacteric in the extreme. The room darkens. Fetal faces draw spotlights from the dense matrix. She kneels. Not a whimper, but centrifugal quake and strain. Ovular potentials huddle in lines for stringing crowded and frozen onto a tight choke. She hugs her shoulders, surrogate, unconsoled, and a creature leaps out, trailing chains, goes surfing the tidal walls. He will not come again to her bucking bounty, her body talk, her raucous primitive yells. She will not be the bright goddess of the bar stool, fabled and revered in 10 parched villages. Hail of the ripped legend falls in blades. A thing of flesh flames in the mouth of the monster, and she recalls a hard prophecy told in the spring grass. Lincoln's rev on the melting brick, informants crouch in a lonely copse and beg for mercy. In the torture room, the air sparks and yellows, dark seeps into old pictures, and the girl with the lank, dead hair creeps blindly from the screen. She probes her body and finds a silent blowhole. Her fingers return 1,000 red messages that pool and brindle in the cradle of her palms. If she screams, she doesn't know, but colors curry the weather. Pumpkin, desert, and vulva, lunatic yellow, bum in the gutter green. She crashes, glass and glint fling themselves to, watches her eyes picked to the veined bone, girl, crook, and goblet smothered on the lizard dark floor. This next poem is called Knowledge, and I'm thinking of the story of Boand in the metrical Dinshenachus. A silent man guards a closed well. You must approach naked, if at all. How does he know what a coat conceals, when so much happens beneath each surface, rippled or smooth? Pushing the cover off is labor, done in purple stages, like the crushing of grapes. The reward is rich. A new exposure calls the sun to make gems he'll clothe you in, like a nascent queen. Caution. Dark water simmers in its own gut, and will think nothing of sucking you down into its cave of twisted mirrors, or hurt by your struggles, sweeping you pebbled to a turgid sea. Your lips. Your lips were needy for something practical, but that's dreams. I drove you home. That's dreams too. Your lips sucked me towards you always. I was for you, stuck on those soft flesh ridges, wanting to sow, to fall. We had, you'd have called it sex, signals happening between us. But you blinked and I gollumed, froze the curling wave, hoarded the slide of your fingers and the desert peaks of your breasts. Your lips by which words were formed like, let's say, pearls, were not precious, except to me, who wore them for the down there feel, the all-over buzz. I meant it when I asked you to bed. You said you'd dreamed us doing it and laughed. That's when I knew how others feel for once. You tease. Now we're estranged. Your face still crops. Were you a true, well, love? Whether or not, no regrets. Because this, your lips, was not to be missed. I'm going to throw in this short one that I hadn't exactly intended doing. It's called Like. I like you liking me in the afternoon when you throw off your shepherd's skin and go ramish in the lawn cotton blind lats on your back for stripes. You like me liking you at 4 in the day, wearing nothing but sun eggy all over, and the cries of the children kiting through the houses. They'd need to come right up to the window to see through the Venetian, so it's all right. But put an eye in the pane anyhow. Make it that big world eye, storing trillions of images, like the Polish family at their dinner of fish and rice, the big African husband filling out a small job application, telling the boys to kindly behave. Then there's another window, and inside a woman is sleeping with tongues in her head and pressing back up against the kitchen sink. So we're not really special, but together, and that's just as good. So I want you to like all of me and all of those too, who in the afternoon like something, maybe even themselves. There are several long poems in the book, and I can't do any one completely because of time constraints, but I'd like to do 3 sections from the 2nd of April. This is a poem that started with a cherry blossom tree and Wagner that I was listening to. I was listening to Der Fliegende Hollander on my iPod and landed by surprise under a cherry blossom tree. So I started to explore the moment. It became a kind of meditation on guilt and forgiveness. The poem is a pastiche of various things. There are aspects of Japanese culture and language and allusions to the opera. National and personal guilt are intertwined here with local situations and national situations, and there are also tanka, haiku, and news reports on the Fukushima disaster because it was the same year. So I'm going to do 2 sections from the beginning and 1 from near the end. 2 from near the end. The 3rd section, Kiel, is to do with a trip to Skellig Vihil. On my morning walk, half listening to Wagner, I pause and look up. A surprise of white faces, a cherry tree in blossom. The tree. I suppose it's a minor thing, a small tree with a temporary bloom, its lone modesty close to the shops, opposite the school, beside the church. For 200 marches past, I've missed its hammerhead silence. Now look at me, ghost in the keep of its pocket, locked to its side. I curl my neck to the splay of branches, feel a sternum at my backbone, and think how islands know their nature by their closeness to land. Is this mindless presence a gift, this white song soon a requiem? Like a phantom ship, there's little in me besides routine and regret. Who knows, their risen sap will lead to pain. Sin and singing take the same route. Who goes the journey redacting might never return. Decoy door to decoy, name, number, nation, lost to the maw of a high wave. Kiel. I folded on the deck behind the helmsman, nothing else to do but trust his lizard cool to take us up and over every booming wall of wave. Wall after black wall met ice screen and boat screen, and me, spineless and fetal, mouthing mama, mama through each silent wretch. 1,000 years before, a group of monks and later Vikings rowed here toward the dark island, risking wave and whale for a god at 700 feet. I would never climb a sheer slope for peace or maim, however sword or crucifix cried riches. I close the borders and exclude the stranger, focus on the rules of movement and the body's poise. I seem composed, but slow breathing is to tease fingers, phalanx by phalanx, from the gasping neck of reason and present the semblance of a democrat. This nomad empire, small and so contained, is hardly worth a moment to the tide, but lizard-like it alters to confound the odds, mandate or not. Come love or murder, avidly it clings, echoing the meme, emperor, pauper, defiler or defiled, all caviar to the palate of the sea. And I'm going to do 3 poems from my lockdown diary. Day 9. Heard in head. Best colonizers adapt native culture to theirs. Arrive with a marriage proposal. Remold the existing coercion. I'm no colonist. Marriage of no consequence. Feel the shape of me instead, backing in. There is no change of air, nothing to come to, grip, greet. You think it is you, the ground. You, it is world. I am the prompt, darkly, of the big picture. Day 43. What's running out there? Eye of red, toe of ivory, brow bent, ears upbowed, bristles on the tail filigreed to the gate, elbows knuckled down. Ah, there, unearth it, parade the way. 2. When you said you are made of thoughts, you said to bring the coals in for the old fire, the furnace covered with iron, and stoke it closed, and stay with it, your hands, your opposed fingers, learning it. She learned by the quick slash something made in the fabric of the synthetic fiber, that long knives have a mind to slide through sensitized channels like eels. Stiffened to monsters in small rooms, they hack at the door she barricades with a laundry basket, a bin, her body pressed against them. He's mindless or has a mind to attack. Once his antics were cute. Now they're a bucket of bomb-based nitroglycerine, his father concludes. 3. The philosopher has made a book from 100 days. He praises the new communal sympathy of governments. Will the absence of a meaning cause the mind to collapse? And I'm finishing with this one. Thank you for listening. Day 46. There are 50 days, by the way. Fingers and the mustard yellow sash create a slim person. Dawn has dipped in. Walls in yellow attempt to whip the miser light eking through small panes into the miser's finer muscle. Sleek the curtains, flaxen. Remember the mad seduction, absolute home, tremendous death of the flower azure. She was frightened to hear by the many moving walls and must not stay. Every day she says it, knows by shaping the curtains to a body, to a bouquet, smoothing her owns, stroking upward her nippled mounds, downward her belly, rounding her shape, the good passage link of the world. It's in the homings, the carefully pouring, forever poising that she leaps, will leap. Attention does it. When the body has died into azure, fingered flaxen, buttered itself on the inside, up goes the tongue voracious through the gleaming corridors, perfume on it and colours of slow meaning to lick its good, induce the seneschal teeth, the lips to bring to the palace the correct, what only she feels to be fine, not necessarily trumpeted, the sweet stringent hands. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. As I say, we thought, Nuala and I thought we'd ask each other a few questions, and partly because we're interested in each other as well as for your benefit, perhaps. So is that okay, Nuala? Will I shoot? Now, I was wondering whether you could talk a little bit about flash fiction and why you love it so much, but also I'm personally interested in how voice and character development are different between flash fiction and the short story, and also where you stop with flash fiction, because they say that a short story can be quite long, but flash fiction really does have a word limit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't any solid definition of flash fiction, but generally they're very short stories. For me, flash are sort of like in the range of 100 to 700. Again, the Americans are sort of more generous in their word counts, so they would consider flash up to 1,000 words. So people differ on what they agree on for word count. But for me, sort of the 500 word is sort of the sweet spot for flash. And the magazine that I run, Splunk, that's our upper word limit is 500. I suppose I've always loved fragments and short forms. Like as a teenager, I used to read Ivor Cutler obsessively and Emily Dickinson and people like that. I always loved things that were very concise, precise, small and well made. That would even extend to objects. I'm a big fan of small objects, tiny little glass things and that sort of thing. So it's to do with liking that kind of pared back concision. Even the poetry I write, I don't write a lot of poems anymore. But the poetry I used to write was always sort of short lyrics as opposed to epics. I would feel very accomplished writing a long poem. If a poem went beyond a page, I'd be like, yes. So yeah, I suppose what I love about them is actually their closeness to poetry, that they are a gappy art, that they're a very different reading experience. I spend most of my life writing novels, and for the last few years, historical novels. And there's a particular thing you're at when you're writing historical novels, and that is doing a lot of research and doing a lot of writing and doing both in tandem. So flash fiction for me these days is like a lovely little break from all that research and all that writing. I think it was Larry Moore who said short stories were like a mad, lovely visitor, you know, as opposed to being in a long marriage, which the novel is what the novel feels like. It's a day-to-day experience. It's very comfort blankety as a reading experience and as a writing experience. You're sort of always, you're adding all the time. Whereas with flash, you're just trying to keep things as neat and tidy and small as you can. The other thing I suppose about flash is on the page, they have visible edges. And so as a reader, you come to them more like you come to a poem. You can see the edges, you know where it ends. And so you don't bring this massive weight of expectation to reading a flash. It's a very different reading experience to reading even short fiction. And definitely, I would say long fiction and short fiction have very little in common other than that they are prose, you know. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everything I write in a sense is short. My last two novels have been very long, but all of my chapters are short, which often doesn't please my editors, weirdly, but I find readers rather love short chapters. They're so enamored with them because they feel like they can draw breath and think about what they've just read. And, you know, the way chapters operate in novels is they kind of shift as you go along. And I like that. I like that kind of diverting the attention. So there's even a story-like feel to my chapters. And I suppose, like the short story, flash is read, and like the poem is written to be read in one gulp. It's a one gulp experience. You know, you read it and then hopefully you're moved by it or surprised by it enough to go back and read it again. And the wonderful thing about flash, like poetry, is each reading offers up something new, usually offers up something new to you as the reader. They beg rereading, and that's something to love about them. Like I will reread my favorite flash kind of to try and understand how the writer achieved what they achieved, but also as a kind of a comfort experience, the way we reread favorite poems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did Birdie come about?
Actually, I was lucky enough to get when the pandemic hit, the Arts Council, in order to help artists, advertised this COVID-19 Arts Award, and it was €3,000, and you had to produce a piece of work that could be shared, you know, digitally or in a socially distanced way. So I decided I would produce an ebook, and initially I thought I would write a novella, which turned out to be way too ambitious. So I had some historical flash written, and so I wrote some more. I have a big stash of flash actually that is not collected, because when I have published short story collections, often the editors have been mildly allergic to the flash fiction. People tend not to get it. They just don't, there's not enough for people. They don't understand that it's a particular reading experience, and they have to almost train themselves to understand how to read it and to love reading it. So editors will often be a bit, yeah, I don't really want all those short ones in there. So I have a bunch of them. So I took some of the historical ones I had, and then I wrote some more and I put them together, meaning just to make an ebook, which I did do. And then Arlen Hayes of Arlen House contacted me and very kindly offered to make a hard copy issue of it, which, you know, if you are a writer or a reader, generally we love hard copy, you know, it's just so lovely, physical object. And he made it with French flaps, and, you know, it's just this gorgeous little object. And so when he offered that, of course, I didn't even think. I said, yes, please do. So then it turned into something more than I had intended. But I have to say the whole process was joyful. I picked the cover image myself. I sourced it online under Creative Commons. I edited it. I chose the order of the story. So I had great creative freedom, and it was incredibly enjoyable as an experience. It almost made me want to become a small publisher, but not quite.
It's amazing, but I know people have said this before, but it's amazing how people don't read short fiction very much, considering everybody's talking about all the other available things that are coming at people. You'd imagine that short pieces would be things people would like to read on a bus or on a train or something, but they don't. And also the beauty of them, because picking up Birdie, even, I love the short story. I think it's a beautiful form, and flash fiction and prose poetry, all of those, I think they're beautiful forms. And the minute you start to read, you know that there's a tension there, the tension in the sentence, tension in expression. And it's, well, I find it a beautiful read. I really don't know why they're not more popular.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at play with that. I think there are a lack of, let's say, national outlets. So there's a flash fiction community and we read each other hugely, but we don't have a lot of outlets that are very visible, similar to the short story. The short stories that are published in widely published things like, say, the RTE Guide or the newspapers are generally, sometimes they're commissioned, or they're not probably, you see, I'll be slaughtered for saying this. We'll take the RTE Guide as an example, right? So they will commission a short story maybe a couple of times a year, but they're always from commercial novelists who are not natural short story writers. So maybe readers are not getting access to the best short stories that are available. So there's a lack of visibility for the short story. And then the publishers are also at fault. The large publishers, I'd say, small publishers keep short stories alive. But the large publishers, they don't seem to want to publish short story collections and promote them. So there's a difficulty there. Readers will buy anything if it's sold well.
I was just going to say that, yeah, publicity.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of shit books that have been million sellers. So there's plenty of really good books that haven't sold much at all. So there's a real problem with marketing. But I think in Ireland we're more warm towards the short story because maybe we studied it at school and we remember Frank O'Connor and Mary Lavin with fondness. But there definitely is a PR problem with short stories. It's one of these things we talk about endlessly in the short story community, but we're just talking to ourselves,
So do you want to say anything else about Splunk, about the magazine?
We open again for submissions in February. For the entire month of February, we look for 100-word stories, micros in Irish or English. We look for up to 500-word stories in Irish or English, and we would love your submissions. And any of you who write poetry, you can also write flash fiction. We accept stuff that is not laid out like poems, but might read more poemy, if you get me. So we're open to prose poems, but you just have to call it a flash.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Thanks a million, Ray. So I wanted to ask you, it always astonishes me when I see you perform. You're so wonderful, and so you embody the poems when you perform them, and it's stunning to me that you're able to learn them off by heart. And I just wonder if you talk a bit about that, the performance and the relationship it has with the text.
Yeah, as regards learning things off, that's something I would have always done as a child, I suppose, but also I did some acting, and also it's just something that's in me, really. The way I remember things by rhythm. I could actually remember the rhythm of something and not know the meaning of it. So, and I could actually learn something off. I can, yeah, I've got a funny sort of mind. I can actually read through a page, not know what's on it, and pick out the grammar mistakes. So, and that is really, really weird, I kind of, but actually learning stuff off is not a major difficulty. As long as I can get the rhythm, I can remember numbers, I can remember things, I can remember lines and so on. But I do forget. I mean, tonight I kind of fluffed maybe one line, but there are nights when I maybe fluff one or two. I just, gloss over it, but generally speaking, I can remember. So it's pure practice though as well. I would forget if I didn't practice. So a lot of people ask that question, and it's hard work. It's work. You work at it as well, and of course you say it to yourself as you're going along, and you talk to yourself and that sort of thing. So
do you record your voice, for example, and then when you're out walking, listen to it so that you remember it? Or
actually, I never do that, but I do record my voice to see how it's sounding and to check the tone, and also pace, that sort of thing. So I do kind of do a lot of that. I used to do a lot more of it before, like when I started off, that I put an awful lot of work into preparing for performances.
yeah, because like a whole extra layer to your practice, because your poems read beautifully on the page as well. I was reading through Imbolg today, and I said to my husband, she's definitely a genius, and I really believe that's true. There's something astounding about your language, your verbs. It's so fresh. It's always so fresh. Like there's lines you've written that I'm just so insanely jealous of, as a writer, because the verbs are just like, they're so brilliant. It's like, how did I not think of that? Because when you write it, it's just perfect. You might tell us a bit about Imbolg itself and the making of the poem, and maybe added to that structure of the book as a whole, and how it came together.
Yeah,
it's quite a long time span.
Yeah, and the first three parts of this book were written between 2009 and I think about 2014, 16. We added it happened fortuitously, actually, because I could add Easter 2016. I could put that in there. That won the Listowel single poem prize. Imbolg, interestingly, I had written 3 poems, well, one each for 3 of the Celtic Fire festivals, and I performed them. Now, none of them are actually in a book. I've always performed them, but I couldn't get Imbolg. I tried it numerous times and couldn't get it. So I was down in Kenmare, and Sean Garvey, the traditional singer, happened, we went for a walk after there was an abortive gig, one of these things that would go wrong. It was taking place in a cinema and it didn't happen for some reason. I don't know what it was. Something went wrong. So we all went down to the local pub, and I said a poem down there. That was it. So the following day we went for a walk, and he said, "You might be interested in this." He said, "You might just use it sometime." And he told me the story of a farmer brought a tractor and trailer with sheep and rams. I don't know whether he had more than one, but possibly more than one ram in the trailer. And one of the rams escaped, and he was found 2 weeks later in a holiday home. And the thing about this holiday home was that its walls were covered in mirrors for some reason, which we could speculate on. And but the ram had broken all the mirrors, and he just he was exhausted after the 2 weeks. So apparently sheep do mate on the basis of appearance. They actually can see each other, they see the shapes, and they assess each other that way. So that was where Imbolg came from. And also it was the question of change, of course, and the lambing season and all that. And what's in there as well is that my mother was older when she had me, and so her womb was removed after I was born, and that was always just something in my head. It's the kind of thing that stays in your head. So that's the wintered womb. But I've kind of played around with them and married them all together, and it is that kind of defiant thing. But the ram is the big thing in there. And so it's about change. It's to do with change. So there are various poems there that occurred when I was sort of moving or changing things, when my relationships were changing. I'm glad to have this out there because they have been written for so long, and it's, in a sense, it's finished with now. I am different, but I do like still a lot of the poems in there. And then there are a few long poems in there that I find very strange, and that a lot of people find very strange. But the way I write is trying to represent the experience as it is. And I realize that I am expressionist. I do kind of try to produce the images that the body feel gives, if that makes sense. Yes, the images that the body feel is giving. So
it comes across. I mean, yeah, the poems can be elliptical in places, mildly difficult to penetrate, but the thrust of them is always understandable, if you know what I mean. I can always get, and a lot of it I found very poignant, and you know, the stuff about mothering and about, it's interesting on the back of the book, on the blurb, you talk about attempted personal change. And that really made me smile because I'm attempting a large personal change at the moment, you know. And like last night I was in tears because it's not all going as well as I wanted to go, you know, that kind of way. And I sort of smiled wryly at attempted. All we can do is attempt, isn't it? We can only try.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is that we think we have choice, but we don't necessarily have choice. This is a huge thing with me. I'm not sure whether we have a choice in anything really. We feel compelled, and where the compulsion is coming or whether we can choose is a huge question.
But you also look at that in the poems. You look at society and the pressures of society, and I find that very interesting because I'm so interested in it myself. In terms of that, like considering we're looking at a time span of, we'll say 11 years for this book, how has your writing changed, do you feel, and what are your kind of, where are you moving towards maybe?
I'm interested in writing, I'm calling it poetic essay for the moment because I don't have a better word. But I'm not sure. Right at the moment I'm doing a PhD and I am writing these essays. My blog has been very enjoyable. I've stopped it for the moment because I want to review the whole direction of it. But I find my blog is basically a practice, but I've been practicing with the blog for many years now, and it's essay. So I hope maybe to adapt a lot of those. It's certainly organic mixture of reading and response to reading, really. I love research. I love thoughts, various kinds of thoughts. I love appreciating other people's work as well and responding to it. So the blog has been like that. So that's really, I think, one of the places I'm certainly going. So I might think of a book of essays, even, you know, kind of monograph, something that's a study of some, you know, people that I like in some way, you know, like writers or whatever. And there are a couple of people that I'm interested in who aren't great writers, but who are women who are very, dissatisfied women. And I wouldn't mind studying them. So that sort of thing, studies of people, I wouldn't mind doing that sort of thing, essay type work. I have, of course, novels and other things that I can be working with as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a brilliant project. You know, there's always just so much to write about, isn't there? It's a matter of choosing a project and committing to it. That's sometimes the hardest thing to do. Always when I'm kind of in the thick of a project, I'm staring ahead at the next one. I'm much more interested in what's next. It's kind of a terrible affliction, though.
Well, I totally identify with that. You know, I mean, for the past, I mean, I'm doing this work for the PhD, but I have like several folders full of notes for several works I want to write, you know, and it's always the case, you know, so there's never going to, yeah.
Like I'd be nearly gasping to get to the next thing in case I forget what it was I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
But if you did that all the time, you'd just end up with, you know, just too many fragments. I mean, I love fragments, but you don't want a gazillion of them. At some point you want to cohere and do something proper.
Well, you kind of do want some money sometime as well. At least you've been successful that way. Sometime I wouldn't mind having some money for my writing, but you know, at least you've gone and you know, produced those you know, well-received novels and all that. So
yeah, the novels, I mean, the only way you earn money with novels really is getting published in the States, and I'm lucky that my agent is there, and so I get published there. You know, there's no real money on this side of the water at all. You have to do it for the love of it, which thank God we do. We were just talking earlier about how the writing of the thing is the best thing, you know. The rest of it is just, I don't know, like the aftermath or something.